Welcome to my review for Candyman, which I saw at the cinema just the other night. Because this is a new movie, by the way, I'm going to go spoiler-free today. I have a long history with this franchise. I rented the original Candyman just after it was available to be rented in the UK. I think it would have been early '93. I saw it with my cousin and her boyfriend. I was too young to be watching it with them, really. I was only about 13 at the time. And boy, did that movie scare me. I mean, it had a massive effect on me. I couldn't get it out of my head for weeks afterwards. I persuaded my dad to let me rent it a second time so I could enjoy it again, which I did. And I just became a massive fan. I don't understand why this film isn't lumped in with the absolute greatest horror films of all time. Things like Halloween and The Thing and The Shining. You know, it should be in that same conversation every single time for me. I rented Candyman 2 when it came out around about 95, and I thought that was okay. It was enjoyable, obviously not in the same class as the first one, but still a worthwhile sequel, just about. I never did get around to seeing number 3. I think I'd just about had enough after 2. And the announcement of the 4th film got no reaction from me, really. I wasn't interested in seeing the whole thing dredged up. I probably presumed that it was a reboot, and I just wasn't interested. But then I saw the trailer and my position completely changed, because it was a great trailer. And when it became apparent to me as well that this would be a sequel, again, that really piqued my interest. So I added it to the list of films that I wanted to see at the cinema. So to give you a quick plot synopsis for this, I guess if I was going to do this properly, I would recount the events of the first movie as well. I'm not going to do that because it's going to take me all day. I'm going to presume that you have at least seen the original. So in the new film, it's 2019, it's the modern day, and Cabrini Green, the site of all the shenanigans from the first film, has now been turned into a group of luxury apartments, and there's a struggling painter living there. Don't ask me how, if it's meant to be like these really expensive apartments. I guess his girlfriend is sort of helping him get by at the start of this movie with her money. I'm not entirely sure on that. But anyway, this guy starts to find out about the legend of the Candyman. To begin with, it's more the legend of Helen Lyle from the first movie that he finds out about, and then eventually that leads him to discovering more about the Candyman. And so he goes down that rabbit hole, and the movie sort of proceeds a little bit like the first film, I guess. And I will forgive the people behind this movie for not calling it Candyman 4. I normally hate it when films take the number off and give it the exact same title of a film we've already had in the series. But in this instance, because we're going back to Cabrini Green for the first time since the movie whose title we're copying, I guess I'll just about allow that, just this once. Nia DaCosta is the director of this. She's a woman who is only 31, I believe, which basically makes you a toddler in the world of directing. She's not got many credits to her name, and even though I think this film is quite average overall, sadly, I can see enough of the talent in this woman to make me think that she's going to go on to have a great career. She's going to do movies eventually that are way better than this. The kills are pretty creative as well. One of the problems with the Candyman as a character is that once you get past the first movie, it must be hard to think up good ways for him to kill people, because you can't really have him killing people in any other way but with his hook. You know, he's not like a Jason or a Michael where he can suddenly pick up an axe or something different, or put them into a chipper machine or something. You know, it's pretty much got to be the hook every time. Otherwise, it's out of character. But a lot of the kills in this film, they're so nicely staged. There's some great thinking has gone into them, and I really appreciated that. At least 3 or 4 times I thought to myself, that is a really clever way of doing a kill that I don't think I've actually seen before. There's one in an art gallery, which is brilliant. There's another one in a hotel, equally brilliant. So yeah, even though most of the kills happen in the standard man with a hook sort of way, they were impressive. My next positive, which is probably going to be my final one, is that the story, at least in the first half of the film, is very clever. After 20 or 30 minutes of this, I was really excited because the way that the plot is developed had me thinking, wow, this could be a terrific next hour. It didn't pan out that way. I guess you can imagine what one of my negatives is going to be if I'm only saying that the first portion of the story is great. But what I really liked about this is that it's not just the Candyman legend that the Anthony character is delving into. There's also the Helen Lyle legend, as I've already hinted at. There's also the legend of a possibly real life killer who used to hang around in Cabrini Green, an actual guy who put a hook on his hand and was giving sweets out to kids with razor blades. So you've got all these different myths and legends from the same area who sort of muddy each other's waters. And you can just imagine if this was a real thing, that people in the local area would be getting confused with each other over which legend had done which kills. And, you know, if the killer came back, who is it? Is it a real life person, copycat, or is it one of these actual supernatural figures like the Helen Lyle ghost or the Candyman? So after sort of half an hour, I had no idea what was going to happen later on. I was thinking, are they going to pull the rug out and have Helen Lyle be the killer in this for the most part? Or is it just going to be the Candyman? Or is there going to be a sort of real life thing, a bit like the whole Roy Burns affair in Friday Part 5? I think if you're going to go for something like that, you know, have somebody pretend to be the Candyman, I think this series would be a better place for that than Friday the 13th. I was quite intrigued with the whole human copycat idea that's sort of hinted in this. And there was a little bit of that in the original film as well. There was a character who sort of bugged Helen in the toilets at one point and said, "You're looking for Candyman, you just found him, bitch." And he was certainly a little bit of a violent individual, that guy. I can't remember if he committed any murders in that film from memory. I don't think that that guy is meant to be the similar character in this film, who we see flashbacks for from 1979, but I like the fact that they throw that in there. So now for the things that I didn't like about the film, and yeah, where did the second half of the story go? I'm really confused. I've only just seen this film, and I can hardly remember anything which happens past about the halfway point. I think what's probably happened is that when I was watching the second half, my brain thought that I was still in the first half, if that makes sense. But the final scene really crept up fast on me with this, and it's a strange scene to have as your last one in the movie. I kind of thought that that scene was the game changer moment, if you like, where we then proceed on to the big finale somewhere else for the last 10-15 minutes. I never would have guessed that this was going to be the last scene and that we were ending here. It was a real head scratcher. My first thought was, okay, that's weird. I'm going to have to try and puzzle this one over when I'm on my way home. I got the impression as well that some people in my cinema screening were a little bit confused, and doubtless there would have been some people in there who'd not even seen any of the previous films. I'd seen, you know, 2 of the previous films going in, and I was still a little bit confused. One of the big themes of this film is art. You know, Anthony is an artist. That's not just an incidental piece of information. We see him painting pictures. There are scenes in an art gallery. A lot of the characters talk about art during this film. Candyman himself was an artist at the time that he was still alive. And a lot of the kills in this film feel like the director's attempt at producing little miniature masterpieces of the macabre, you know. But this ending feels like an attempt at doing art too far. It feels like an artsy ending instead of like a proper ending. It's the sort of ending that makes me feel like the director wanted it analysed in an art gallery. She wanted people to look at the ending and think, "Oh, that's an interesting. I see what you were trying to do different from. That's very curious." But all it left me thinking was, can we have a proper ending, please? And I feel like there's a bit of sequel baiting going on with that final scene as well, from the characters that are still alive and the situation of the story at that point. It's all set up for a second film. It wouldn't surprise me if the backers behind this film really hoped that this would take off and do as well at the box office as, say, Halloween 2018 and It. Obviously, COVID came along and has probably scuppered that. So I don't know if this film has done well enough in the post-COVID world to get a sequel. I'd be interested to see a part 2 because I think it could improve this one. You know, if this film carries, if a sequel carried on exactly where this film left off, I think it could really improve this particular one. But As it stands right now, this film, where it is, I just think to myself, it's got a really unsatisfying last scene. And in fact, the entire last half an hour, I don't think was anywhere near as good as all the setup leading up to that point. My other negative for the film, and this is a smaller one admittedly, is the fact that Cabrini Green has gone and been replaced with these luxury apartments. This is something that I read about before I watched the film, and I felt a tinge of disappointment then, because the idea of Anthony exploring the old Cabrini Green, whether it would be abandoned or still occupied, I think that would have been really creepy. I would have loved to have seen that, but we don't get the chance for that because Cabrini Green is completely gone. I would have had these luxury apartments situated just, a stone's throw away from the old Cabrini Green, close enough so that maybe the characters can even see it outside of their bedroom window. That there could have been this class war thing between the people living in the modern place and the less prosperous residents of the old style tower blocks. I would love to have seen the old Cabrini Green. And there's this confusing thing as well where Anthony goes to this street of houses, and it's possible I just wasn't listening properly when he set off for this little area, but I thought to myself, where's this supposed to be? Is this like a street which is quite close to where he lives with his girlfriend? Because it seemed to be quite important to him. There was graffiti on the walls of these abandoned houses with Candyman written on it and stuff. But I was just kind of wondering where this street was meant to be, because we certainly didn't see this street in the first film, and it actually crops up again in the second half of this version of Candyman as well. So I don't know if the film didn't quite explain that properly or whether it was just a moment I wasn't paying attention. On the whole, there are not actually that many things wrong with this film. I've only named 2 negatives there, but the trouble is one of them is absolutely huge, So it's going to have a big impact on my final score. Sometimes when I review a film, I can think of 6 or 7 things to say about it which are bad, but they're all really small things, so I still end up giving a good score. Not going to happen today, sadly. So moving on to my summary, and you know what, I'm going to do the score today first, and then we'll move on to my final words. Normally I do it the other way around. So let's have a look in the bag of terror. We've got 1, 2, 2.5 bloody axes out of 5. That is my average score. Not bad, not good. I'm splitting things right down the middle, a bit like Candyman with his hook, dissecting somebody. I will say though that in this case, it's a bit of a disappointing 2.5 out of 5, given the fact that I love the original film so much and that the trailer for this was so impressive. And also the fact that I was really enjoying the first 30, 40 minutes. And then the plot just went down this really unsatisfying path. I mean, I completely lost the Anthony character at some point in this when I really liked him to begin with. When I think of Helen in the first film, I was right behind her all the way to her dying breath. But at some point during this 4th Candyman film, I don't know, Anthony just left me somewhere. He completely left the building. So yeah, there are problems with the second half of this film that, I don't know, maybe they'll be improved with another viewing. I really do hope they make a sequel to this, because if it's just left like this, it'll be a really kind of bittersweet end to the franchise if that's what it turns out to be. So keep your fingers crossed that the film makes enough money that we get a second part so that this film can be finished off properly. But for now, those are my thoughts. I'll be back soon with another review. Until next time, cheerio.